You're not lazy, your biology changed. What if you did everything exactly the same and still got a different result? Same breakfast, same workout, same bedtime, job, habits, but at 45, your body responds differently than it did at 25. You recover more slowly, you lose muscle more easily, you store fat differently, you don't tolerate a bad night's sleep the same way. You get injured doing something you've done 100 times before. Your brain feels different, your energy feels different. Even alcohol suddenly hits differently. And eventually you start wondering, what am I doing wrong? Well, maybe nothing. Maybe the problem is that you've been following the same rules inside a body that is no longer playing by them. Because here's something nobody really prepares us for: aging changes the rules. And most of us don't realize the rules have changed until the old strategies stop working. When you're young, your body is incredibly forgiving. You can sleep for hours and still function the next day. You can stop exercising for 3 months and come back relatively quickly. You can eat terribly for a weekend and somehow recover just fine. You can pull an all-nighter, drink too much, skip workouts, live under enormous stress, and your body keeps covering for you. That's one of the greatest illusions of being youthful. You think your habits are working. Sometimes your biology is just protecting you from the consequences. And then something changes. The protection becomes less forgiving. The same bad night costs more. The same week without exercise costs more. The same injury takes longer to heal. The same amount of protein may not stimulate muscle the same exact way. The same calorie intake may exist inside a body with less muscle and different energy demands. You didn't necessarily become weaker. The margin of error becomes smaller, and that's aging. Not simply getting older, but gradually losing the biological buffer that once allowed you to get away with things. Think about muscle. At 25, you may never think about it. You walk, you climb stairs, you carry groceries, you get off the floor. Muscle is just there. Then, slowly, over decades, something happens. If you're not actively giving your body a reason to maintain muscle, you begin losing it. And here's what's fascinating. You may not notice because muscle loss doesn't announce itself. It doesn't hurt. There's no alarm. Your body simply becomes slightly less capable, then slightly less capable again, until one day you say, I don't know why, but everything feels harder. The groceries didn't get heavier. You changed. The stairs didn't become steeper. You changed. The workout didn't suddenly become harder. The body performing it changes. And this is one of the strangest things about aging. The outside world stays relatively constant, while the machinery experiencing it changes. And the same thing happens with sleep. At 22, you can stay awake until 3 a.m., sleep 4 hours, drink coffee, and somehow make it through the day. And now, if you do that at 52, completely different experiment. Because sleep isn't just about feeling rested, it's when your brain processes memory. Your hormones follow their rhythms, your muscles recover, your immune system changes actively, your metabolism recalibrates. As you age, sleep itself can become lighter and more fragmented. And for women, menopause can add another layer to that. Hot flashes, night sweats, hormonal fluctuations. Suddenly, the body that once tolerated sleep deprivation is now struggling to get quality sleep in the first place. Same person, same 24 hours, different biology. Then there's food. This is where people become incredibly frustrated. They'll say, I've always eaten this way. Well, exactly. That's the interesting part. The same diet doesn't necessarily exist inside the same metabolic environment forever. Your muscle mass may have changed, your activity may have changed, your insulin sensitivity may have changed, your hormones may change, your sleep may change. So if the same meal enters, but it enters a different biological system, the food stayed the same, the body receiving it is not the same. Even your response to stress changes. So when you're younger, you may be able to work all day, sleep 5 hours, raise kids, exercise, keep going. You start believing this is just who I am. But what if what if it wasn't? What if you were living on biological credit? Your body was absorbing the costs, compensating, repairing, adapting, until eventually the bill arrives. And this is why I don't think aging is simply the same accumulation of years. In many ways, aging is just accumulation of things your body can no longer compensate for easily. That's completely a different way to think about getting older. And here's where I think it gets really interesting. Two people can have the same exact habits and age completely differently. One can smoke and live to 90, another develops lung cancer at 55. How many of us have heard that? One person eats poorly and remains metabolically healthy for decades, and another develops diabetes. One person barely exercises and remains functional into old age, and another loses significant muscle. Why? Because habits matter enormously. But habits aren't acting alone. They're interacting with genetics, environment, hormones, muscles, sleep, stress, disease, and decades of accumulated biological history. You are simply the sum of your habits. You are the result of your habits, interacting with your biology over time, and time changes the interaction, which brings us to a fascinating question. What actually changes when we age? Well, everything. Okay, your mitochondria becomes less efficient. Your cells accumulate damage. Your DNA experiences changes. Your proteins become damaged. Your immune system changes. Chronic low-grade inflammation tends to increase. Your ability to build and maintain muscle changes. Your blood vessels become less flexible. Your hormones change. Your brain changes. Your repair system becomes less efficient. But here's the strange part. None of these symptoms age at exactly the same speed, which means you may not have one biological age. Your cardiovascular system may be aging beautifully. Your metabolic health may not be. Your muscles may be remarkably young, but your arteries may be older than expected. So when someone asks, "How old are you?" the answer we give is simply how many times the earth has traveled around the sun since they were born. That's chronological age. But biologically, the question becomes much more interesting. How much has your body changed during those years? And this is why scientists are becoming so interested in biological age, because two people can both be 60 and have completely different futures. One is strong, metabolically healthy, physically active, sleeping well, independent. The other has lost significant muscle, has insulin resistance, poor cardiovascular fitness, chronic inflammation. Both have lived exactly 60 years, but have their bodies aged the same amount? Probably not. And here's where aging research becomes fascinating. Scientists are now trying to measure that difference through epigenetic clocks, blood biomarkers, cardiovascular fitness, grip strength, muscle mass, metabolic health, even the speed at which you walk. We're beginning to ask a question medicine rarely asked before. Not simply how old is the person, but how fast is the person actually aging? And that leads to perhaps the biggest question of all. If aging changes the rules, can we change how we play the game? Can building muscle at 50 change what 70 looks like? Can improving cardiovascular fitness change how quickly your heart ages? Can fixing sleep affect brain aging? Can improving metabolic health slow biological aging? Can we actually become biologically younger? We don't have all of those answers yet. And that's what makes this field so fascinating, because for most of human history, aging was something that happened to us. Now we're beginning to ask whether parts of aging may actually be modifiable. Not stopped, not reversed like science fiction, but influenced. And that changes the entire conversation. Because maybe the goal isn't to live like you're 25 forever. Maybe the goal is to understand that body you have at 45 needs something different from you than the body you had at 25. And the body you have at 65 will need something different again. Your biology just changes. So your strategy has to change with it. You may need more recovery, more attention to muscle, better sleep, different nutrition, more deliberate movement, more prevention. Not because you're failing, because the rules changed. So if something that used to work for you suddenly doesn't, don't immediately assume you're lost your discipline. Get curious. Ask what changed. Because you are not just your habits, you are your habits, interacting with a body that is changing every single day. And maybe that's the real challenge of aging. The game keeps changing while you're still playing it. The question is whether you notice soon enough to change your strategy with it. I'm Dr. Rizwana Zaidi, and on this channel, we're going to explore one of the biggest questions in medicine. What actually happens to the human body as we age, and how much of it can we change? If you're curious about the answer, subscribe, because I think we're going to discover that aging is much more interesting than any of us ever thought.